Welcome to the Dildorks, dorky discourse on sex, dating, and masturbating. My name is Kate Sloan. I'm a sex journalist, a sex blogger, and I really feel bad whenever I turn down almost anybody for sex. It's like a big source of guilt for me, even though as a sex educator, I tell other people, like, you can say no any fucking time you want to, and fuck anybody who makes you feel shitty about it. But in my real life, I'm like, I don't really feel like it. Is that okay? And it's like, dude, get your shit together. Assert your desires or lack thereof. Who are you, friend?
I'm Bex. I'm a sex educator and porn maker, and maybe this is arrogant of me, I don't even know what this is of me, but I actually don't know what part of turning down sex feels worse. Like, whatever that feeling of letting that other person down or making them feel bad or, having to reject someone. We talked about that last week. Or like, excuse me, I'm a horny slut who always wants sex is the thing. I am a perverted, filthy hole that just always wants to fuck, right? Isn't that, come on, man. Come on, body. What are you doing to me, man?
Right.
Come on.
Yeah, there can be a sense of that you've betrayed yourself or that you've let yourself down. I feel that. Because sometimes there is a voice in my head when I'm saying no to sex that's like, but hey, I mean, the last time that we did this, you really liked this, remember? Like, sex is the thing that you like. So maybe you should just buck up and fucking do it. Which is like sometimes good because of the whole responsive desire thing. Like, sometimes I do get into it if I just like say yes, even if I don't feel like saying yes. But other times I just end up being kind of like dissociaty and like mad at myself that I didn't hold my ground. So like, I don't know. It's
and
hard.
Like, sometimes that voice in your head is the like, no, you enjoy this. Remember, this is fun. And sometimes that voice in your head is like, no, you're the kind of person who enjoys this. Remember,
Right.
That is part of how you think of yourself. And it's like, oh, those are two different things is the thing.
Yeah, and then on really depressed days, I'm like, remember, you're the type of person who enjoys this. And if you're not, you're fucking worthless. What's wrong with you? And it's like, whoa, calm down.
Yeah.
It's really not that deep, bro. So we're talking about sexual rejection this week because we had a lot to say last week about romantic rejection. And it was like, I really don't want to try to cram sexual rejection into like 10 or 20 minutes because we just won't be able to do it. There's just too much to say. Most of the questions we received about sexual rejection were kind of about like rejecting people for sex in general, but there was one that was rejecting someone in a very specific circumstance that I wanted to start with because I have feelings about this. This person said, sexual rejection because I'm on my period is confusing and sucks. Thoughts? Yes, it can really suck. I don't know. I don't want to like jump in. I feel like I've been talking for 80 hours. Do you want to jump in with a response to this?
Oh, yeah.
Before I yell about it.
I was like, yes, no, I have opinions on this, but Kate has opinions on this.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Let me cede the floor. I was like, no, I know what is coming. Let me allow it to. Anyway. But no, I think. Well, I mean, so the first thing that came to mind on this question is are you being rejected or are you doing the rejecting? And are you doing the rejecting because, like, you just don't like having sex on your period, or are you just preemptively kind of rejecting yourself because you're like, no, it's icky, they couldn't possibly enjoy that? Because, like, those are several different, very specific circumstances, you know?
Yeah, I do often forget when I'm having this conversation with people that there are people who menstruate who don't enjoy having sex while they're menstruating, whether it be because it physically doesn't feel as good for various reasons, or because they find it gross and messy and don't want to clean it up, or because of more kind of like external, like they're worried about how someone else is going to feel about it, and so they like kind of self-reject, like you said. And if you are the last type of person there where you're self-rejecting or you're assuming someone else will reject you on that basis, I would say have a conversation with the person or people who you're worried about this happening with, because you might be surprised. Like, I think that when I was younger and not very sexually experienced, I assumed that most people wouldn't want to have menstrual sex. And I've actually been surprised that like probably half or more of my sexual partners have been totally cool with it, or at least like mostly cool with it, to the point where like if we laid down a towel or if I wore a tampon some of the time or whatever, that it would be fine.
Yeah, I think like I've noticed that I've been surprised by how often people are like surprisingly chill with it. And I do think it is a thing that can get talked about more.
Mm-hmm.
But what's also coming to mind is someone whose videos I watched when I was working at Make Love Not Porn that not only was chill with it, but that it was actively a turn on, like actively enjoyed having sex when his partner was on their period.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not a thing like if you had asked me if it existed, of course I would have been like, yeah, no, that totally makes sense, sure. But it is not a thing I had just like stumbled upon and encountered in the wild. That like it wasn't just, hey, yeah, we can. Like the dirty talk was about that, and it was something that he actively talked about enjoying the taste and the smell and the experience of. And that was really cool. So not only like you may not, it may not be a matter of like, oh, they're going to be horrifically grossed out or like neutral and fine about it. Like they can just, there are people who will genuinely enjoy it. There are people who are going to be indifferent about it in not a like, yes, I'll get over it to have sex with you kind of way. There are people who are just going to be like, yeah, no, that's not sure. Cool. Bodies do body things. I don't know. And then there are going to be people who are going to be like, it's not my jam, but like, I really love having an excuse for it to be, another kind of sex that week. Right. Or like, yeah, no, I'm totally fine with it. I just don't super want to go down on you that time. So I think it's absolutely worth opening up the conversation, because I think a lot of people will assume it'll either be like, ugh, I'll do it for you, or an absolutely not. And there's so many other possibilities of reactions that you might receive.
Yeah, I think people who don't menstruate, who will reject people who do menstruate on this basis, maybe don't really think about the fact that you're, in some sense, insulting their body, even if you don't feel like that's what you're doing. Like, even if you feel like you're saying, well, it's blood, like, surely you understand why I don't want to consume blood, and that they're not going to take it personally. Like, it's still something that comes out of their body, and it's also something that comes out of their body for, like, a large amount of their life. Like, perhaps up to, like, 25% of their life. So, yeah, it does suck to feel rejected, especially, continually over time, and especially by someone who normally seems really into your body and attracted to you. I want to affirm for this listener that if you actually are like upset and offended by being rejected on your period to the point that it feels like it's a deal breaker, like you're allowed to have that as a deal breaker. I actually pretty much have that boundary for folks. Like, if I was 2 or 3 dates into seeing someone and we had sex and I was on my period and I found out that they were like vehemently anti-period sex, I really might end things because of that. I wouldn't necessarily tell them that that's why I was ending things, because I think that can come across as like coercive, or like you're like, you have to go down on me during my period or I'm gonna break up with you. And that's like not really great, but like it really does signal to me that oh, this is tricky. I don't want to say that all people who are squicked out by period sex are body shaming or body negative or sex negative, because like I don't really think that's true. I know that some people have squicks that they are really not in control of, and that may not even be in line with how they view their own ethics or beliefs. But
right. Well, I mean, there's a difference between being squicked and like acknowledging like, I find it kind of icky, but what are the sexy things I can do with you in that time? I don't like following that up with, but I don't find you icky, and what are the other things we can do, and what sounds fun, and like having not my jam as a footnote in a conversation about all of the other hot things you're going to do with them in that time, I think is a fair expectation. Versus, like, I won't date anyone who isn't willing to go down on me for, like, all the time I have my period. Like, you might find less people willing to hit that bar. And that you are allowed to set the bar wherever you want. That might be a little trickier. But I do think it is a pretty fair expectation across the board that someone is willing to at least have a conversation with you about the things that do sound fun for them, rather than just being like, no. And the things that sound fun for them better not just be like, well, you can give me a hand job and you can blow me, and that that all sounds fun. Like, how can I get you off? I think that's a fair expectation.
I so often see posts on forums and stuff where people are like, yeah, during my period, it just becomes blowjob week. And I'm like, but are you cool with that, though? Like, I really wouldn't be cool with that. And I like blowjobs. Like, I really like giving them. I don't want that to be my entire sexuality for a week out of every month or however often. And, like, I think when I'm really honest with myself, the reason that this is a deal breaker for me is that I have enough body insecurity and body shame to deal with. I don't want that to be a part of my relationships, even if they don't see it that way. They don't mean it that way. I'm going to interpret it that way. And I know that that's like maybe not a fair interpretation of someone being squicked out by blood, but that is just how I feel about it. I feel body shamed when someone does that. And I've tried to work on that and it hasn't really been successful. And I just don't want to feel body shamed by people I'm trying to have sex with. Like it makes me put walls back up in terms of emotional intimacy and feel less able to be myself around them sexually and otherwise. And it's just not great. It doesn't make me feel good. It's not good for the health of the relationship. And so I think when I meet someone who is that squicked out by blood, it really is in the best interest of both of us for me to just be like, yeah, this isn't going to work for me. Like, peace. Have a good time with whoever the next person is who you're going to sleep with.
Yeah, I even found myself the one time I was fucking someone who was like actively squicked about blood. I would find myself even in situations that like I wasn't on my period, like times we were fucking, I would be like, have I bled at all? Because that is, I like putting big things in my holes. I have an IUD. Sometimes I just bleed as a result of fucking because we're in a stock room and don't have lube or whatever, right. You know? So, and that's not a thing I want to sit and be anxious about. I just want to finish getting fucked. Thanks.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think if someone was nervous about blood, it would make me wonder if they were also nervous about other things. Are they going to be the type of person who's going to be freaked out when I squirt because they think it's pee? Are they going to be freaked out if we do butt stuff and there's some kind of messiness there? Like, you know, I'm just going to not really be able to fully relax around them. And for me, that's a problem. I know that that's not necessarily as much of a problem for everybody else who menstruates. But in terms of advice for this listener, who it sounds like is a person who menstruates who does not like being sexually rejected for that, I do think a lot of people who reject folks on this basis really don't understand the emotional impact of it and that it can help to explain that to them. Like I have seen people have a light bulb moment when I go, when you say that you refuse to go down on me because I'm bleeding, it makes me feel like you think my body is disgusting and that doesn't feel good. And sometimes people will go, oh, like I didn't even think of it that way. Of course I don't think your body's disgusting. And from that point, you can negotiate, like, what would make you feel better about that when that trigger gets tripped? Like, do you want them to kiss and lick all over the other parts of your body and like really worship your body? Maybe give you a massage, maybe give you a ton of compliments. What would make you feel better about whatever emotions are being brought up when this happens?
Yeah, I think, like you were saying, asking for reassurance is really important. And I think this is a really great opportunity to once again find the things that you can do together and talk about the things that do feel really hot. And I think talk about, like, especially if your partner is not a person who menstruates, I think when you were talking about how, yes, this happens for quite literally a quarter of people's lives often, in like actual time. Like, I don't think that it's a thing that people think about the like overall impact of, and like the way it is just so core a part of your everyday, and a little bit like, you know, I don't know, being squicked by the fact that like I have a runny nose sometimes. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's not great, but bodies do that. I don't know, my nose makes mucus. I don't know, that's what it's there for. It's one of the things it does. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
And kind of grounding the conversation and like, no, it's just like, I get that it's kind of icky because it's totally foreign, but like it's fully just a everyday part of my life. And you saying that that's horrifying is like, I don't know, man. I've been living with it. I don't know what to tell you.
Right. I always found it so strange that like so many of the people who are grossed out by having blood in their mouth are the same people who also expect their partners to swallow their semen every time. And it's like, I don't personally find semen gross except for days when like my stomach is upset anyway, but like, you know, that's also a lot on the senses, right? And it's like also overwhelming, and also some people consider it gross. And I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I'm gonna get canceled for like expressing some of these opinions, but like I really sometimes am just like, I don't know, I don't get it. I will say, I guess I should talk about like some of the workarounds for this if you don't want to just break up with the person immediately. If you still want them to like go down on you or do things to you or whatever, but they don't want to interact with blood, you can, you know, wear a menstrual cup, wear a tampon with the string tucked inside, use a dental dam. Try using maybe flavored lube, although I don't really find that it covers up body type flavors very well. But if you are using a flavored lube on a vulva, make sure that it is a vulva safe one that doesn't contain any sugars. I would recommend Sliquid Swirl. But I mean, I think mostly what I just want to affirm is like, it's okay if this bums you out, and it's okay if it's a deal breaker for you. It really, really is. Another listener says, my partner feels unwanted when I sexually reject him, but it has a lot to do with me having responsive desire. How can I reassure him? This is so classic. If you don't remember what responsive desire is or have never heard us talk about it, it's a type of desire where rather than becoming spontaneously turned on, you don't really become turned on until some kind of sexual stimulus has already been happening, whether that's you're watching porn or your partner's touching you, or even sometimes like you're fully having sex and then you start to get turned on from the sex that you're having. I think the first and most major step here is to explain what responsive desire is to your partner, and then to equip them with the information they need to get you turned on. And if you've been in a relationship with someone for a while, it may seem kind of odd to have to explain to them how to turn you on, but like, I don't know, you might know stuff that they don't know about, you know, how that works for you. I have had to tell a number of partners that like just asking me, do you want to have sex, is never going to work on me, because my answer by default is going to be no, unless, you know, we've already been dirty talking or flirting or watching porn or whatever. Like it just feels sort of foreign to me at this point to try to get into a sexy headspace from zero.
I think it also, in addition to explaining that to them, it may also be helpful to kind of get into the habit of communicating with them in the moment when you notice desire. Because like responsive desire can occur from a lot of different things in a lot of different ways. So like if your partner comes up behind you while you're washing dishes and kisses your neck for a second and you go, ooh, I'm kind of horny. Share that. And like set a precedent where like saying, ooh, I feel that glimmer of wanting to fuck someone does not mean, so we're going to go fuck right now. Like set that right off the bat. We're going to have whatever little cute way we choose to say it. I'm going to share whenever I notice that little like, wow, you're like, often in my house, I will like come around a corner and see my partner will be like, "Oh, hey, you're cute," or like, "Wow, your ass is great. Wow, hi, wow." And that it essentially communicates something similar of like, "Oh, hey, I just had a feeling about a thing." And if that happens when you're watching a show together, if that happens when you're reading a book, like you can show how like, "Oh, I felt a little glimmer," and it can kind of demonstrate the little things that have that occur, and also the path of like, because your partner will start to notice, oh, they said like something sparked like way early in the day, and then like the sparks started getting closer together, and then eventually we started fucking, right? Or they may notice that like, oh, there were a few that just peter out and become nothing, and other times where like there will be several sparks throughout the day, and you can kind of, rather than explaining to them, actually demonstrate for them what this kind of arousal process feels like for you and how it ebbs and flows. And they may start to understand how like, oh, there hasn't been any sparkles at all today. It would probably be really weird for me to be like, let's go fuck. Like I know what the path looks like, and I haven't seen any of the signs thus far. So kind of give them that little peek into what you're experiencing so that it can feel as natural to them as it does for you.
Yeah, that's such a good tip, because that helps them sort of like learn over time what they can do, and like yeah, that's great. I have also found it super helpful to watch porn with a partner. And one of the ways that this works best for me is like, I'll usually curate a list of like 2 to 3 porn clips that we're going to watch together. And maybe the first 1 or 2 are like kind of more novelty type things that I would watch for like entertainment purposes, like an interesting fetish that I'm like, I wonder how that works. Or like, you know, you read a really wild porn clip title that's like, I make him come 5 times in 1 minute. And you're like, what? And like, you know, stuff like that where you're like, I have to see this, even if it's not like for directly sexy reasons. And I know that is one thing that can kind of get me on board with watching porn, even when I don't like really feel like watching porn. And then by the end of the porn playlist, I am sometimes turned on enough for sexy things.
Yeah, I think that's really clever because I know for me, sometimes part of what can feel so overwhelming about the idea of like, hey, let's have sex when like my responsive desire hasn't really quite been triggered yet is the not necessarily the idea of receiving sexy stimulation. I'm like, yeah, that feels good. Sure, great. But the idea of like performing, hugest scare quotes in the world, sexually, and like, I don't know, appearing to be enjoying it as much as, because I'm like, often when people are like, hey, want to have sex, and my responsive desire hasn't really been triggered, it's a process of like, I mean, I have no idea what my body will do or what'll happen. And like, who knows if I'll come or anything, but like, sure, that sounds fine. That sounds pleasant. Yes. But that pleasant isn't the reaction most people want when they're like, let's go fuck. And I'm like, that sounds like a lovely time. That sounds delightful.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of like watching those videos as like, no, my job here is to have fun and be fascinated and possibly find this a little silly. That I can do almost any time. Like, that is a mood I am quite frequently in. Yeah. And like, this is quite silly, but oh, look at the way that dick twitches, though, is a good way to kind of like shortcut me into like, okay, by the time we get to the sexier ones, I've already had a few little sparkles and I'm starting to like move into a place where sexy things makes more sense. I also think this is a really great opportunity for scheduling sex, which I know a lot of people feel weird about. But I think I've talked a lot about how my brain needs foreplay for all kinds of things, and I think putting sex on the calendar is a good way to already kind of trigger that responsive desire just a bit. If you are a person who will feel pressured by that, which is certainly a thing too, obviously this isn't going to work for you, but there is a way that you wake up and you see either literally on the calendar or you remember, oh, tonight I have a date and that date might end in sex and that's going to be real fun. And that'll kind of like give you your first sparkle of the day and get you kind of thinking about it and letting it simmer throughout the day. And then you're less likely to like reject this person because you've already kind of been getting excited about it and you know that this is like the thing. So you're put in that situation less often. Like you might wake up that day and be like, I got a date tonight and I probably might have to have sex at the end of that date. And on those days in advance, you're like, hey, like, we've talked about this. I know we planned for tonight, but like I have XYZ going on and it's actually, I don't know about tonight. Maybe we reschedule. And then you check in and communicate, whatever. But I do think scheduling will help with that kind of mental foreplay for a lot of folks.
Yeah, and I like the suggestion about like putting it on the calendar, thinking about it throughout the day, because like I think that conversations about responsive desire often end up like putting the onus on the other partner to like get you turned on. And like I'm very guilty of this for sure. And like fortunately in my relationship, like my partner I think enjoys that process and like doesn't mind it. So it's like not as pressury as it has been in maybe some of my past relationships. But like if you do want to be a bit more proactive in terms of like activating your own responsive desire, there are ways you can do that. Like if you have a date tonight and maybe like during the like getting ready part, like before the date, maybe you're gonna like watch some porn or read an erotica or like reread some old sex with the person that you're going out with or something. Just like kind of stoke your own fire a little bit, or at least like know how to do that so that you can do it when you need to.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I don't want to end up this whole conversation at a point where like, so here are the ways to just avoid rejecting your partner because you have responsive desire by having sex with them.
Right.
We talked a little bit earlier about the process of like communicating with your partner and explaining what responsive desire feels like. And hopefully that will also part of doing that is, in my mind, making it easier for your partner to receive the idea of responsive desire. And also giving you the confidence that your partner does understand what you're saying, right? Because I know a lot of us, maybe we know our partner is totally fine hearing a no and absolutely wouldn't want to have sex with us otherwise, and still feel real bad when we got to give it, still feel weird and complicated about it when we got to give it. And by kind of sharing that process of what responsive desire feels like for you, and like genuinely talking about how like when you asked me to have sex out of nowhere, it's not like I'm not saying no because you're unattractive. I'm saying no because the concept of sex is new to me. I have just rediscovered it. You've raised it. Like I have never even considered that idea before in my life. I have no idea. Wow, gosh. And like, I think particularly if your partner understands how the rest of your brain works, like that's probably not a surprise. When you explain that, and you understand they really get it, they really grok it, you can feel a little more comfortable being like, nope, it was one of those moments where I'm just totally hadn't even occurred to me, no idea, and they understand that, and you can see them go, oh, okay, no, figure it out, no, it's fine, whatever, and you'll maybe feel a little more comfortable.
Right. I would also suggest have your partner read the book Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski. I mean, everyone should just have all of their sexual partners read that book, and everyone should read that book, I think.
Yes,
it is just a foundational text about how sexuality functions and many of the things that influence our desire levels in ways that we might not have known. Emily Nagoski is just the patron saint of desire in my mind. I love her.
Yes.
This week's episode of the Dildorks is sponsored by audiodesires.com, an audio erotica platform that contains many, many audios that are professionally produced, starring passionate voice actors and featuring realistic storylines with a focus on being body positive and kink positive. I'm a big fan of audio erotica. I know that you traditionally are not, but like, what did you think when you dove into the treasure trove on audiodesires.com?
Well, so I fully was expecting to be fairly uncomfortable through a lot of it, because that's generally been my experience with audio erotica. I enjoyed listening to recordings of people reading fan fiction in the past, because they weren't reading it to me. But so often when I listen to audio erotica, it is like as if someone is dirty talking directly to me, and they're not. They're very clearly not. And the like dissonance between that just makes me so uncomfortable.
Right.
And I was really surprised to enjoy this because of that high production you were talking about earlier. It's more of an audio drama. There are sound effects in the background. The characters' voices are like emotive in a different way than I've heard in a lot of the other audio erotica I've heard. That is more, again, sounds like it's supposed to be an audio recording from my partner, but it's not, and it weirds me out, man. But yeah, so I enjoyed this a lot more than I expected to, and listened to actually a couple different stories this morning.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of our favorites of the week. I picked this story called Pillow Talk with John, which was this 15-minute, really romantic, cuddly boyfriend experience type of audio. There was a lot of reassurance up top about like, you're beautiful, I love lying here in bed with you. And it was kind of like a morning sex scenario with like some cunnilingus and some hand stuff and lots of dirty talk. And I was really impressed by the production values of it, and in particular by the voice actor. It really kind of reminded me of like having phone sex with my partner and just having like someone hot whispering things in my ear that are really sexy. And I actually was like almost kind of more turned on by the idea of like picturing this man in front of his microphone reading this script and getting turned on from it maybe than I was from like the actual fantasy. I was getting a little bit meta with it.
No, I totally get that.
What is a story that you liked this week?
Yeah, so I think my favorite of the ones I listened to this morning was one called The Interview, which was about a author who was being interviewed, and it turns out the interviewer is like an old friend who he's always kind of had a flirty dynamic with, and there are like a few kind of pretense kind of questions that they get to flirt during, and then it's just like, so I really love those sex scenes you wrote. Maybe we should do that.
This just sounds like a role play I would just do in my real life.
Right. No, right. I was like, no, that sounds fun. I'm here for that. And yeah, my favorite thing was, I think similarly to what you're talking about, one of the reasons I liked this one so much, not just because of the setup, was because it was one where, yeah, like the person who narrated it, his voice was like really breathy in all the best places. And there were definitely moments where I was like, oh, Joel, okay, well, hello. Goddamn, hi.
Yeah.
You having a moment over there, buddy? I am. I don't know. But yeah, and I enjoyed that a lot more than something that, like, there were moments where it has felt less performative than some other audio erotica that I've listened to, and I really enjoyed that.
Cool, yeah. Well, this website is just full of different audios that I think our listeners will enjoy. And if you go to audiodesires.com/register, you can scroll down to where it says partner code and enter our code, all caps, Dildorks, that's DILDORKS. And that will get you 50% off an annual premium membership or 20% off a monthly premium membership. But before you sign up, you can listen to up to 4 stories for free to get a little taste of what it's going to be like. And then you can enter our code Dildorks to get a discount off your membership. So check that out once again at audiodesires.com/register. And thanks for the support. I want you in my bedroom. A listener is struggling with feeling pouty when their partner sexually rejects them, even though they know that obviously their partner fully has the right to sexually reject them. I have been there. Sometimes, even if, like, ethically, you know that what you would ideally do is say, no problem, thanks for telling me, and then just, like, move on with your evening. Like, sometimes it can be hard to sort of not show that, like, inner poutiness and like slight frustration or feeling of rejection or sadness. So what would be your tips on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's good that you're recognizing that this is not the reaction you want to have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that said, I mean, my I have questions around the idea of struggling with poutiness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like if the issue is you're struggling about externalizing that, like you're finding yourself reacting in ways you don't want to, I would say have conversations about how your partner can, like, I don't want you to be like, here's how to reject me in the perfect way so I never have a feeling. But, you know, here are the ways that, like, put kind of the safety bumpers around my feelings while I work on practicing how to navigate them. And here's how you can make that easiest for me while I work on getting better at this. That is a very important second half of that sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's all about externalizing your feelings, and like there are a lot of skills you can work on about, how do I hang on to this, how do I not make this my partner's problem until I can go talk to a friend or go and talk to, my therapist, or go and talk to someone else about the feelings this brought up. However, if what you're asking is like I'm struggling with feeling sad when my partner rejects me, not expressing that sadness and putting that sadness, well, not coming from like a victim-y place of like, almost weaponizing that sadness, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
externalizing it and making it their thing to deal with because they rejected you. You are
Mm-hmm.
allowed to say, wow, that's a bummer, like I'm bummed about that. And that's fine. Like, however, if the question is, I feel sad when my partner rejects me and I would like to not, I think that's harder. And I think my advice is actually more around like, yeah, no, that's because when someone hot doesn't want to have sex with us, it's sad. That's why you feel sad, because it's a sad thing.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, um, you don't get the thing you wanted. That's pretty core, like a thing that gives humans feelings is I want that thing and I can't have it right this second. That's what feelings are made for. I mean, come on. So like expecting yourself to not feel sad is a pretty silly standard to set for yourself, and like it's a bar you're gonna fail to hit every time, and then you're gonna feel extra sad about it, which like super doesn't help this not making the sadness other people's problem thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say focusing on, yeah, I like whine about this to appropriate people and I put my feelings in appropriate places and express them in, adult ways is totally a valid thing. But I do think it is important to like leave a little bit of space for yourself to be like, oh, I wanted the thing and I didn't get the thing,
Mm-hmm.
and that feels icky inside. Like yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think that I've been able to reduce my own sadness about this by
Mm-hmm.
changing or upgrading my masturbation routine in various ways so that it feels less like a consolation prize. Whether
Mm-hmm.
that be you're watching an interesting porn thing that you've been excited to watch, or you get to read an erotica book that you're into, or you get to try a new lube or try a new toy, or like, go take a sexy bath and jerk off in there. Like, make your masturbation more exciting for yourself and more something that
Mm-hmm.
you would look forward to, and that way you won't feel quite as bad when like you have to turn to that instead of having sex with your partner.
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, I think that the biggest issue for me is like if I feel like the choice is between having sex with my partner and not having any pleasure or fun at all. So of course I would be sad if like I get told for the evening like sorry, no pleasure and no fun for you. But like that's not really what they're telling you. You could go masturbate. You could ask them if it's okay if you masturbate beside them while you're holding them. There are various things you could do, but yeah, you're gonna feel pouty if you feel like you just have to sit there and be sad and sexually frustrated. You don't have to do that.
Yeah, and also, likely, it is not no sex ever again forever.
Right.
It is no sex right now. It is no sex tonight. It is like, you can also, I mean, I'm a person who enjoys edging. You could also be bummed about it and be like, oh, darn, I'm gonna be horny all day tomorrow, I guess. Oh, no.
Yeah.
That's the worst.
Life
right?
hack, get really into edging and chastity.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you can, there are ways to eroticize that. There are ways to, like, I think, yeah, my advice is not sit and wallow in the misery of it. Like, I do think it is important to look at the broader picture of, like, I cannot do this thing right this second. And there are so many other possibilities for me to feel good at so many other times in my future. And actually wanting to feel good and not quite getting it right away is a different kind of feeling good sometimes. And, like, there are all kinds of other ways that I will experience pleasure and joy. But I wanted it now. Like, give yourself a minute for, like, you can recognize, like, how this isn't the most adults feeling I've ever had in my life. This isn't, the moral high ground I want to stand on. But I wanted it now. Like, you're allowed to have your little, ugh, that sucks. and then focus on all the other things.
Yep. I would also say, and like, I assume you know this because you're asking this question, but like, if you do have this pouty reaction repeatedly, whether or not you mean to, it can kind of create like a conditioned response in your partner where they feel less comfortable saying no. So it might be good to have some kind of practice of like reassuring them that their no was fine, even if you are not like totally thrilled about it. I've had like a couple of people say thank you to me when I've like expressed a boundary, which is always nice. It's, it's not as meaningful if you can tell that they're like saying that because they feel like they should, rather than actually feeling grateful that you are able to set your boundaries. But I mean, expressing some kind of acknowledgement that like the person was right to speak their truth is a good idea here, because it's really easy for people to start to feel guilty about saying no when they really have nothing to feel guilty about.
And have this conversation at times when this is not actively happening.
Yeah.
Like, come back around to it and be like, no, I know it put me in my feelings. I'm working on it. It was not my intention. And, actively actually be working on it, right? But, like, the moment of being rejected is, like, a really easy way for humans to be really activated and in a place of a lot of intense feelings. The person being rejected and the person receiving it. Once you have come down from those feelings, take a moment to, like, back when you were in a place, day or two later, or, a much more, like, casual, comfortable, less drenched in feelings and whatever place where you can say, yeah, no, I recognize that my reaction looked like this. It is not, I was bummed, but I know that the bigger thing, like, no, I understand, and I was in my feels, and I'm working on not expressing them that way. I'm sorry about that, right? Like, a moment where you're like, no, I'm still thinking about this, and I understand what that looked like, but I'm not trying to do this,
Yeah. Yeah, it might also be worth discussing with your therapist if you have one or can get one even temporarily. And I'm not saying that to pathologize sadness over being rejected, because as you said, that is like a very normal reaction, but it might be related to something that it would be helpful for you to work through. Like, do you feel triggered into a state of shame when you get rejected? And if so, is that related to a past trauma around perhaps a past rejection or even childhood abuse, something like that? I know that some of my struggles with this were related to really traumatic past rejections, especially ones that were very public and like humiliation based. And I didn't really realize at the time, but like I was having kind of like emotional flashbacks to those initial experiences. And that was why it felt much bigger than it actually was. Like a beloved partner saying, no, thank you, not tonight, not really feeling it, felt to me like you're a disgusting monster and no one should fuck you because you're gross. You know, that's a very outsized reaction. And if you're finding yourself having an outsized reaction, I would really suggest talking to a therapist about it.
Yeah, I agree. I would say, I mean, I don't think it's pathologizing to say get a therapist to most people. But I do think, particularly if you are having feelings that you are unable to kind of keep to yourself and put to the side for, like, in reaction to something that you recognize as totally someone's right to, you know, that you recognize as more about you than someone else, then yeah, I think a therapist can help with that.
Mm-hmm. I think we have time for one more. We've sort of touched on this a little bit, but like, I am wondering what your thoughts are on the best and kindest way to turn down a partner when you're not feeling it. Because like we've talked a lot in this episode about like how to react to someone's no, but I think that like saying no can sometimes be even harder. So what's your advice on that?
I think, I think no. So we're talking a lot in this episode about like ongoing relationships, not necessarily long term, but partnerships where like we have a fairly contextual yes to sexy touch. Like it is a thing that's fairly regularly on the table, and now it's not. And that is an interesting kind of new situation in saying no. Like it is not a thing that we talk about as often. But I think those no's more than any other are a part of an ongoing conversation, are a part of an ongoing understanding amongst the two of you about like the kinds of reasons we may not be feeling sexy, right? Like my partner and I generally this last year, we generally both have fairly high sex drives, but like, I don't know, if it's in the morning when like both of us really like morning sex and like I roll over and I'm sliding my hand, you know, along their hip or something and they're like burying their face under the covers, I'm like, oh, they woke up with a migraine. They, you know, that does happen. Yeah. And I'm going and getting their meds instead. Right. Because I like, and they can just say, oh, I woke up with a headache. Right. I woke up. So like, if you know the reason that you're not feeling it, if you're like, hey, actually, now I'm stressed about that thing that you already know is coming. Right. And I can't focus on this. I'm thinking about that stressful thing, right? Or like, we had that thing for dinner and my stomach's not feeling great. Maybe not, you know? Like, I think these situations are really great for being able to touch to like things they already know as like, no, because of this. And like, this is a person who knows you and probably knows the day you've had or the week you've had or like is an integral part of your life and is able to contextualize that really quickly and easily, and it's gonna feel a lot better than just like, no, I don't wanna, because they're like, what, why? I know so much about, but why not? Is it a secret from me? I don't.
Right.
So yeah, I think that context can be really, really helpful.
If you're meeting up for a date, I often find it helpful to text in advance to let someone know if I don't think I'm going to be feeling like having sex on that date. And like this came up this week actually because I got a text from my friend with benefits who, like me, is vaxxed now, and he was like, "Do you want to get together?" And I do because I miss him, but I don't really feel quite ready to have sex with him again. Like, I don't know. It's just been like a year of basically social isolation and not having sex with anyone other than my spouse. And it's, I don't know. I feel like I want to tiptoe back into it. I'm not feeling super comfy. So I said, like, yes, I would love to see you. I don't think I'm feeling sex though. Could we meet up for like, catch up conversation and maybe some makeouts? And I find it much easier to set those boundaries up front via text. And also, I think as the person receiving it, it can be easier because you have time to process that, so you won't be pouty when you do meet up with them. You know in advance what the deal is. And if you're both agreeing to it, then both of you know that you've both opted into it. So nobody has to feel guilty or uncertain about anything. And it's just much clearer. And I think that it can be a good strategy, although, sometimes you don't necessarily know in advance if you're not going to be feeling it.
Yeah, I think that is really helpful for when you can. And I know we've also talked about this, but that's also something you can build into kind of the structure of a date in that, like, I don't know, we're going to go get lunch at a park is not a date that's designed to end in sex.
Right.
It just isn't. And, like, I think typically people would, understand that, right? So you can kind of build that into the structure as well if you don't want to be as explicit right away, or if you don't know going in how you're going to feel, because that is a date that you could easily like say, oh, do you want to go back to my house for, a drink afterwards? Or like, oh, that show we were talking about, you want to come over? I can show you the first episode. It would be really great. My house isn't far from here. Right. And then you are moving into a situation where sex is more notably on the table. But that can also feel easier to say no to than like a date that starts on the couch together and they're leaning a little closer and you're like, oh, now I say no, but not this though, which is totally fair, but also in the moment can be a lot more stressful.
Yep. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of The Dildorks. My name is Kate Sloan. I have a sex blog at girlyjuice.net. I have a weekly newsletter at katesloan.substack.com. My most recent essay there was about the movie Eyes Wide Shut and why it's just basically cuckold porn that Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman made. And I also am on Twitter and Instagram at girly_juice. You can pre-order my book, which is coming out in October at 101kinkythings.com. And you can listen to my other podcast. It's called Question Box. Where's your stuff?
I'm Bex. You can find all my writing and information about my workshops at bextalksex.com. I have a Better Bottoming for Submissives workshop coming up in August on Thursday the 26th. So check my website for links to the Eventbrite for that. I would love to see y'all there. My blowjob workshop was fantastic. Like, I was a little nervous about doing it online, but the group was great. I had like so many fun people that were quite active in the chat, and it was a lot of fun. So I'm really looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, that was a fun time. I really enjoyed watching people in the chat reacting to your blowjob demos. It was very funny.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. I also enjoyed watching my partner sitting at the table next to me reacting to my blowjob things. But that was just a personal joy for whole other reasons.
Yeah.
Anyway, I get to the section on trans cocks and I'm just watching them visually melt next to me. I'm like, I don't even know how. It's fine. Anyway, together we're the Dildorks. We're at thedildorks.com, patreon.com/thedildorks to throw money at us for being fantastic, and at the Dildorks on Twitter and Instagram.
Thank you so much to Protodome, who did our theme song. He's at protodome.bandcamp.com. Thank you to Amy, who did our logo. She is at starboots_ on Twitter. Thank you to our sponsor for this episode, which is audiodesires.com. And remember that you can go to audiodesires.com/register and enter our promo code DILDORKS, DILDORKS, to get a discount off your order. And thank you so much to you for listening. Until next time, folks, get out there and live your sexy, dorky life. Bye.
Bye.
Let's make a cup of tea. I want you in the morning. Let's stay with me.
Yeah, I agree, and forgot I had to take a moment to add things.
I mean, you don't have to. I can try to think of more stuff to say about that.
No. I know what happened was I agreed and then just started thinking about fucking people. I don't know.
So most of the questions that we received from listeners about this were about, hang on, let me actually read these over again. If I was, 2 or 3 dates into sex with someone and wait, 2 or 3 dates into, that doesn't make any sense. What does that even mean? That the sex went on for 2 or 3 days. I'm sorry. I just cracked myself up.